In this third video on combat mission tactics, I will explore some key principles of the attack as illustrated through two battles from Combat Mission Battle for Normandy. Modern infantry tactics were developed in the late stages of World War I. The Germans called this new doctrine stormtrooper tactics. The central idea was to use small groups of infantry to attack the weakest point in the enemy defense using coordinated fire and movement. One group would suppress the enemy, while another maneuvered to assault them. During World War II, armored support was integrated into the mix. In this first example, an American infantry company supported by light and medium tanks, an engineer platoon, and 81mm mortars will attack a German position on a ridge in the bocage of Normandy. An analysis of the battlefield using a COCA reveals an infantry avenue approach towards the objective through the woods on the right. Though the woods is bordered by impenetrable hedgerows, we have engineers that can blast openings on either side of the woods for our infantry. The main road and open fields offer avenues of approach for our tanks. The ridge we start from offers good observation and fields of fire for our supporting forces to suppress the enemy, which we can assume is occupying the opposing ridge. We can bet the Germans have anti-tank guns hiding on the far ridge. The big question is whether they have any infantry hiding in the woods. Our basic plan is to send one infantry platoon through the woods with the engineers and one infantry platoon down the road in support of some tanks, while our heavy weapons and other tanks provide supporting fire. In this manner, we should be able to hit the enemy in the flank. By attacking in the flank, we unhinge the enemy's defensive scheme, strike them where they are vulnerable, and at the same time avoid being caught in a kill zone. This plan follows the basic format of most attacks: find, fix, and destroy the enemy. First, you find the enemy with the smallest possible force to minimize your own casualties. Then you fix or suppress them with supporting fires, and then, by means of fire and movement, destroy them. In the first few minutes, our engineers breach the hedgerow on the edge of the woods, and our infantry begins to fan out as they filter through the woods. Meanwhile, spotters for the supporting heavy weapons crawl to the top of the ridge to scout out the enemy. Simultaneously, a tank infantry team edges along the perimeter of the woods down the road towards the valley. I don't want my heavy weapons spotters moving too far forward on the ridge, just to the crest. So when plotting their movement, I use the T command to check the line of sight from various plotted movement points. Remember, the line of sight is shown from the unit's location, but is calculated from the movement point selected. This way I can test the ability of a unit to see various locations by plotting movement points. The spotters soon come under fire. An enemy anti-tank gun position is revealed. I direct my 60mm mortars to fire directly at the AT gun's position and call for fire with my 81 mortars as well. My machine guns fire to suppress the enemy on the far ridge. Meanwhile, the infantry advancing down the road ahead of the tanks comes under fire. The accompanying tanks provide covering fire, allowing the infantry to continue to move forward and scout ahead for any Germans waiting to ambush them with Panzerschrecks. In the woods, my other infantry platoon moves forward cautiously, with scout teams preceding the main body. I have the scout teams use the hunt command to prevent falling into an ambush. It appears that the Germans have left the woods unguarded. Finding a hollow in the enemy's defenses and moving through it to strike a flank is a key element of stormtrooper tactics and should always be a goal in the attack. Once we are fairly certain that the German anti-tank gun is neutralized, we move forward heavy machine guns and our light tank platoon to the crest of the ridge to bring more fire on the enemy positions. Within minutes, we have fire superiority. Try to take apart the enemy's defense one position at a time. Avoid getting ahead of yourself. As soon as one enemy position is revealed, begin to mass the necessary forces to neutralize or destroy it, either by direct or indirect fire. This way you unravel the matrix of the enemy's defense one point at a time. As the infantry platoon reaches the edge of the woods, the engineers blow a gap in the hedgerow, and the infantry rapidly moves out into the field below the German-held ridge. This is dead ground. That is, it cannot be observed or fired upon by the enemy on the crest. It appears that we have successfully hit the Germans in a weak spot. Finding and hitting a soft spot in the defense is the key to the attack. If you can't find a weak point, create one. Now we will take out the leftmost German position and proceed to roll up their flank. The infantry quickly moves up and assaults the hill, while their buddies keep the Germans' head down. In the valley, our tank and infantry team moves forward by bounds to clear the road in the dale. Our forces have turned the German flank. Now we call in a final preparatory mortar barrage before we start the final assault.
Fire for effect.
Be careful that your men don't move too far forward, or they will be hit by their own mortar fire. Generally, I am very cautious about exposing my men and tanks to hidden enemy units, but it appears that we have such fire superiority that I can move my tanks up. As soon as the mortar barrage ends, before the Germans can recover, we assault their position with light tanks in the center and infantry through the woods on the right. Sure enough, as soon as we get close, they begin surrendering. We have achieved an impressive victory. This was a classic example of finding a hole in the enemy's defense and using it to turn their flank. We had a lot of firepower, and we were able to use it to gain fire superiority quickly, enabling us to maneuver without excessive casualties. The next battle won't be so easy. Unlike the last battle, where our initial plan worked to perfection, in this fight I will grope my way forward. I will be checked, change direction, all the while seeking to move through dead space and weak spots. My plans will change as the engagement plays out. My forces will demonstrate patience and flexibility. Our mission is to seize a village with a weak Panzer Grenadier company supported by 3 Panther tanks. The ground is unfavorable to an armored force with very little scope for maneuver and plenty of places for the enemy to hide anti-tank weapons. In this attack, our forces will arrive over a 30-minute period. So keeping with our basic approach of finding, fixing, and then destroying the enemy, the goal of my starting force is just to scout out the village. I will wait till I have all the forces on the battlefield before I start advancing towards the enemy. From the briefing, we can see that we have a lot of indirect fire support. This represents the largest portion of our combat power, seconded by the Panthers. So those fires will be an indispensable element in fixing and destroying the enemy. This makes the forward observer an indispensable player in the attack. Any officer can be an observer for indirect fire, but the FO can call for fires more quickly. Due to the terrain, it will be difficult to observe the village, but we can use the Target Reference Point, TRP, to direct our fires. Apparently the Americans have decided to send out scouts as well, and a firefight quickly develops. I move my half-tracks forward to support my dismounted scouts. The enemy responds with mortar. I have a forward observer. Because the FO is attached directly to the artillery, he can get quicker response to his request for fire than other officers. I have him call in 105mm howitzers to suppress the Americans in the village. As long as we are under American indirect fire, it is safer to keep my infantry in their carriers. Plus, once I decide on a plan of attack, the half-tracks will be able to maneuver despite the heavy volume of small arms of indirect fire coming from the village. Unfortunately, the FO's carrier is immobilized by mortar fire. Instead of staying in the relative safety of the half-track, the idiot jumps out and is killed. The fire mission is canceled after a few minutes because the howitzers have lost communication with the now dead observer. We move back to a safer position, keep firing, and wait for more reinforcements. At this point, I still don't have a clear plan on how to attack. Reinforcements arrive, and I move my Panthers forward to engage the enemy. The Panther's thick frontal armor makes it nearly invulnerable as long as it keeps its front pointed towards the enemy. This characteristic of the Panther is another key consideration in my evolving attack plan. I don't want to put my Panthers in a position where they will expose their flanks. With my forward observer dead, I have a platoon leader who can observe the village call for fire. We hose down the area with machine gun fire from our half-tracks while we wait for indirect fire support. I send scouts through the woods on the right, but they blunder into a prepared American position and are wiped out. I see an enemy forward observer team run into a farm building. If I can kill them, this will impede the Americans' ability to effectively call for fire. I use area fire from 2 Panthers to blow up the building. The enemy is trying to flank us on the left. They shoot up our scouts. We pull back and dismount behind the hedgerow to return fire. Another Panther tank arrives. I decide to move 2 Panther tanks forward through the field towards the village. As a preliminary step, I have my engineers blow a hole in the hedgerow. This will allow my infantry to move up on the left to protect the Panther's flank from bazooka attacks. The last of my reinforcements arrive. Based on what I've seen so far of the American positions, they are far too strong in the center. My infantry cannot move forward in the center without crossing their kill zone, and I can't move my tanks forward without infantry support. However, it seems that there may be a gap on the defenses to the left. I decide to maneuver in that direction with 2 platoons of infantry. A squad of engineers will lead the infantry by blowing a hole in the bocage. 25 minutes into the attack, we begin moving in earnest. Getting everything in place to start the attack takes patience. You can think of it as setting the table before starting the meal. After blasting our way through the hedgerow, our Panther leads the way, suppressing the Americans in their foxholes. I try to keep as far away from them as possible to prevent effective bazooka attacks. The infantry follows in their half-tracks. We continue to call in barrage after barrage on the village, all the while firing our machine guns in area fire to keep the enemy's heads down. Your half-tracks carry thousands of rounds of ammunition. Take advantage of this copious supply of ammo and continuously fire upon the enemy. Don't try to save ammo. Our movement to the left, along with the relentless, intense fire, seems to be unhinging the enemy's defense. In the center, the 2 Panthers edge forward. One of them spies an enemy tank destroyer and knocks it out. The infantry dismounts from their half-tracks and find firing positions along the hedgerows. We blow a hole in the next hedgerow and move our forces around to the left side of the village. In the center, our 2 Panthers press forward down the main road. 1 Panther struck by a bazooka, but it causes no damage. A pattern of attack is emerging. We move forward slowly, while continuously firing at the enemy. Searching for a way around enemy positions, we use our engineers to make gaps in the hedgerows. All the while, we pound the village with barrage after barrage. The American position in the village is strong, and the terrain is difficult for mechanized forces. We work in infantry armored teams. Infantry protects the tanks, and the tanks use their tremendous firepower to blast holes in the enemy's defense for the infantry. Prior to each forward movement, we hit them with indirect fire to stun and suppress them. Our mortars and artillery are directed by the use of a target reference point at the road junction near the church at the back of the village. Using this previously established point allows you to call in for fire effectively, even though the officer calling the barrage cannot see the target. It also shortens the length of time before the fire hits the target. The final barrage hammers the village, preparatory to our final assault. The Americans counter with their own barrage. Most of the fire falls on our Panthers, and I have them back up. It is unlikely that the American artillery fire can destroy a Panther, but it is possible that they could be disabled by having their road wheels and tracks damaged. The American barrage ends, and the Panthers move back into position on the road, bisecting the village. My engineer squad blasts a path to the left, but is immediately cut down. However, they reveal that the Americans have a couple of tank destroyers and an AP gun by the church. I decide for the final assault to mass my Panthers on the road in the center with the infantry carriers behind them. My infantry will dismount and clear the buildings on either side. I will count on the strong frontal armor of the Panthers to allow me to batter my way through the village. The enemy has fired a smoke screen and I mass behind it. The infantry dismounts and clears the buildings. The smoke begins to clear, and the Panthers surge forward in the attack. Timing is everything. Coordinating all arms to place overwhelming force at the point of the attack is vital to success. Estimate when each element will be ready. Have the patience to wait for each element. As the attack develops power, you gain momentum, and the initiative passes to you, the attacker. Now the enemy is reacting to you. Typically your casualties per minute drop, and the enemy's casualties per minute start to rise. You have reached the culmination point. The last American tank destroyer is hiding on the far side of the church. I send a Panther around to catch the American in the rear. I issue a covered arc command to ensure the Panther swings its turret in the right direction as they move forward. However, I fail to set the cover arc wide enough, and the Panther crew fails to spot the tank destroyer, even though it is only a few meters away. The Panther is destroyed. I swear again to myself to never again use a covered arc command in a similar circumstance. It is too easy to make a mistake. The artificial intelligence built into each unit does a better job. A few minutes later, the American tank destroyer moves out from behind the church and is destroyed. Enemy resistance collapses. Now we are just mopping up. We seize the stream crossing. The battle is over. We are victorious. This concludes the third video in the series on combat mission tactics presented by Armchair General Magazine. We have covered many aspects of the attack, but the basic approach is the same. Look for or create holes in the defense that you can exploit. Before advancing, mash your firepower to achieve superiority. Above all, be patient. Set the table before you eat their lunch. Until next time, this is Jeffrey Paulding for Armchair General, signing off.